Hello, nerdy romantics. OMG. I'm getting into my totally nerding out right now feelings because we are going to talk about Star Trek Discovery, the last season. Oh, let's take a moment. Well, I have here with me a recurring guest on this show, Jen. Hi, Jen. How's it going?
Oh my gosh, things are so good. I'm so excited to talk to you about this today.
And I am excited to talk about this. So let's get into it. Stay tuned. This is the Nerdy Romantics Podcast, and I'm your host, YM Nelson. Okay, Star Trek Discovery. So, for everyone listening, just an FYI, we did an earlier episode on Star Trek Discovery. I believe we ended that at season 3, but we are going to skip season 4. Unless, Jen, you have something that you want to mention about season 4, but we are going to skip season 4 since at the time of this recording, season 5 has come out, which is the final season of Star Trek Discovery. And there's so much in season 5 that I want to make sure that we get all of it. Okay?
Awesome.
Cool. So basically, the first thing that we see in season 5 that I want to, just briefly talk about. Well, maybe not so much briefly. How about we do this? Let me just start talking about it. So the first thing that we see in season 5 is that we see some people that we've never seen before. They are looting this old Romulan ship, and, they find, some stuff, and we figure out that these folks are, actually that's what they do for a living. But as the episode goes on, not that episode, but as episode 2 actually goes on, we find out that one of the things that they've looted is a book that talks about some tech that we realize is the progenitor's tech. And this whole mystery of the progenitor's tech and what is it and going to find this permeates the whole season 5. And that actually is from Star Trek The Next Generation, which is Picard's first Star Trek. And that is in season 6, episode 20. The episode is called The Chase, where Picard actually, an old professor of his, archaeology professor, because, Picard has this second love of archaeology, where he comes and says, I've been looking for these things. And so we find out that what he's been looking for is basically this message from a progenitor of a bunch of species, including ours. And so it's really cool to see this because, of course, I'm such a TNG fan. Jen, you're a TNG fan too, right?
I am a TNG fan. I cannot compare myself to you as a super fan, but I have seen nearly all the episodes of TNG. I watched it when it was on, so I remember a lot of stuff, but I don't remember the progenitor episode specifically.
Yeah.
But I love that there's that tie back to that. I watched this whole thing not knowing there was a tie back to TNG, so that's awesome.
Yeah.
I did a little behind the scenes research on this though, and they call this season the action adventure season. They wanted it to be much more of an adventure compared to season 4. And if you ever want to record an episode of season 4, like we can get into it. But they wanted a lot of action in this one, and I really think that they delivered. They wanted it to have more of an Indiana Jones kind of a feel. So I love that we start off with an artifact that is that's found and discovered, and the people that find it don't know what it is, but maybe it's worth something, so they're going to go and kind of sell it to the highest bidder. And that kind of starts off the adventure of this series, which is of this season, which is just fantastic.
Yeah. I love the whole mystery and the puzzle kind of thing of it. And, kind of you might remember some of it if I say a few things, but kind of going back to the TNG episode, it was kind of like that as well. The professor, he had gotten these blocks of numbers, and they couldn't figure out what the blocks of numbers meant because something happens to the professor before he could explain why he's there and everything. And then when they realize that there's these blocks of numbers, they're like, oh, these blocks of numbers coincide with star systems. And so they have parts of the numbers that are missing. So they then have to go to different worlds to get these to finish out these blocks of numbers. And of course, all the while, there are other people trying to get them too, because they know, of course, too, there's some Klingons that try to get them. There's some Romulans. There's some Cardassians. It's just a lot of people trying to get these numbers or get these blocks of numbers or try to figure out what this is all about. And I love that happens here too. It's a great tie-in, but it does also amp up that action adventure kind of feel. I'm glad that they did it, to be honest, because it brings the fun back into it brings that whole, oh, this is why we are watching Trek, because we like when stuff happens.
We love when there's like, I'll talk about it later, but I love a callback. I love when there's a callback to all the other series. There's so many other things that are happening in the Star Trek universe, which is so exciting.
Yes.
And I love that for us. I love that when they reference in previous characters or reference something that has happened early, and it's almost like it's like a gift to the viewers. It's a gift to us fans who we remember that, and that pulls us back into, oh yeah, that was such a good episode, or oh yeah, I remember watching that. For the ones that are a lot older, it's like, oh, I remember sitting in my college dorm and watching that, or or hanging out with my parents and watching that, like whatever memory that brings back for you, to be able to pull you in. And I love that they do that, and they really view this series, which takes place in such a completely different timeline than TNG. What is it, like I think it's 900 years from the original series. So we've got so like 800 years from TNG, and you're just like, there's so many things that are going on that echo back and echo across the different series, the different shows that they have. So I love it. Yeah.
You're right. Even though Discovery. So since this is the final season, I think I'm going to just kind of talk about it in a cumulative way. But even though this series started out, and I remember how I felt when this came on, I was like, do I really want to see this? Because I actually, and we talked about this a little bit before we started recording, I have not watched a lot of the TOS episodes, the original series. I've watched some, but not a lot of them. Not enough to know, hey, this came from this. Unless you say Tribble, then we all know. But I mean, everybody knows about that episode. So, but this series started before TOS in the timeline, and then in the second season, they go into the future, and now they're so far in the future that they can reference everything. I love how they did that,
Yeah. Yeah.
That is so cool because it's like, okay, you are pulling in things that I didn't necessarily know about with the first couple of seasons, but I liked. And they, with the first series, I meant in the first couple of
Mhm.
seasons with the TOS series that I didn't know about but I liked. But now I get the whole Easter egg feel as well. So it's like,
Mhm. Mhm.
I love this. I love the way this comes out. But at the same time, it's very much its own show.
Yes.
It's very unique.
It's so different than what other, it breaks the mold in the same way that DS9 broke the mold. Because TOS and TNG have a little bit of a similar, planet of the week type of a feeling, right? Where they're
Mm-hmm.
they're traveling around. And and
Exactly.
then and then DS9, Deep Space Nine was oh, everything takes place on a space station.
Yep.
So it's a whole different kind of feeling. So then Discovery with the really unique science that's happening and their time
Yes.
travel, the way that they move through space, the way that they move through time, and the challenges that they face has just kind of really set up a different style while still keeping within the same universe, and so many things that are so familiar to us,
Yeah.
and without giving us like, oh, this again, kind of a feeling. So
Right. Exactly.
mhm.
I get the Easter eggs and I get excited, but I don't get like, oh, they're gonna tell us this again. They're gonna give us
Exactly.
this
Yeah.
episode. Yeah. But I love the fact here, going back to what you were saying about action adventure, it
Mhm.
also kind of reminds me of season 2 of this show where they went to different places and they were trying to figure out things in season
Mhm.
2 of this show. So I'm glad that they did do that. They did, come back to the action adventure because season 4, and you're right, season 4 is such a it's a whole different episode, a whole different season, and
Yeah.
it's
It just
kind of
had the whole
sad.
tone. Yeah, the
Yeah,
tone is different,
the
the
tone is
everything,
totally
but
different.
I feel like sometimes you need that too,
Hmm.
because this is a crew that has lost so much of their life and their family and all of those touch points that we would normally have, like even as far as TOS or Deep Space Nine, even or TNG, as far as everybody would travel, they knew that they could go home.
Yes.
And this is a crew that could never go home again.
Right.
And so I feel like they almost needed like a grief season of of everybody sort of being in a weird emotional place,
Hmm.
and needing to do that. And then we come into season, and the just another little behind the scenes thing, because I get nerdy about behind the scenes stuff.
Yeah.
But they always knew that 4 was not going to be the end. They knew that there was a season 5 that was happening, and so they shot them back to back. And
Oh,
so that's why, to me, it feels like it was a little bit more intentional to
yes.
have to kind of get people into a place where they had to deal with some of the darkness that was sort of at the edges of the stories,
Yeah.
and deal with a lot of the loss that they had experienced, so that they could come into a place, right? I mean, the loss is still part of the story. The things that have happened, all of that is still part of the story. It's not like, I mean, grief doesn't just go away, right? But you figure out a way to live with it, and that's what everybody kind of needed to do. They needed to get some of that dealt with, and then we move into this one, and we can be a little bit more action adventure-y, and we'll talk more about those themes kind of as we go. But yeah, just a real opportunity to have a different tone that felt authentic to the story and authentic to these characters in a way that's unique that would never have applied to like some of the other shows.
Right, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, there's kind of an evolution kind of that happens,
Mm-hmm.
right? So we
Mm-hmm.
start off, season 1, season 2, there's a lot of action, there's a lot of stuff going on, and
Mm-hmm.
then we time travel and we know we can't go back, and then in season
Mm-hmm.
3 there's the burn and they're dealing with the burn, and I just happened to
Mm-hmm.
watch the end of season 3, um like one of the last episodes of season 3 a couple of days
Mm-hmm.
ago, just to kind of get back into this mindset, because y'all, I think Jen, it's the same with you. It's been a minute since we actually watched this, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, because of course at this recording it's been wrapped up for a few months, for several months now. But, at the end of season 3, that's when they really started grieving to me.
Mm-hmm.
And so it totally makes sense what you've just said for season 4 to be a grief session, or
Mm-hmm.
going through that and adjusting. And then, okay, so now we got to come back and save the world again, or now we got to come
Yeah.
back and do something that's totally unique and different, because we are Discovery, we are
Yeah.
unique and different in
Yeah.
any era, whether it's before we see Captain Kirk, or whether it's now,
Mm-hmm.
almost 1,000 years later, we gotta do something wild and crazy. And I do want to circle back to that, but I do want to circle back to the action adventure, but it's also kind of a good segue that I can't let go of, is that
Let's hear it. Let's hear it.
we also have this evolution that we see
Mm-hmm.
of Michael and Booker and their
Mm-hmm.
relationship and them being in love. It's like, it's
Yes.
almost like they've gone through something too. And
Yeah.
and I think, we talked about this the last time when we talked about Star Trek Discovery. I love how their relationship is like real. It
Mm-hmm.
feels real.
Yeah.
Like,
Yes.
they talk about, the cat who's a queen. Booker loves his cat, and it's like, okay, so she has to adjust to, they talk about, they go through things, right? They're
Mm-hmm.
fighting these, bad guys, well, crazy people, they're fighting different
Yeah.
people. They're flying through space. They're doing all this stuff, but yet they're talking about just regular stuff. And it's like,
Yeah.
and they're going through things like, is this what am I supposed to say I love you now? And how do we feel about each other? Do we like this? And
Yeah.
you know Booker, you got to sit down, and because I'm captain of this ship, is there a power
Yeah.
dynamic going on here? Because the other thing about it is that, you know with Booker and Michael, there's a backstory that we kind of don't see, that happens. Because remember, when Michael goes into the future, Discovery doesn't go into the future at the exact same time. So
Yes.
she's there and makes friends with Booker, and they have this whole relationship that we never actually see. And so
Yes.
they have this whole language, and it's like, yeah, it was that time on blah blah blah, and it's like, I don't remember that. But
No,
they
that's
have
that,
their whole language thing, and it makes it even more real to me. I love
mhm.
that their relationship goes through this evolution, and we actually get to see at the end how it comes out.
I love
So,
it.
yeah, so what
Hmm.
are your thoughts on kind of the Michael Booker, the love story that goes on there?
I think they did some really smart things with this because we did have that there's that part of time where it was kind of just the two of them and the cat. they had their adventures that they went on, but it's okay. Part of me feels like what happened then, Michael was in a place where she was literally alone in the universe, right? All she's transported in time, way forward in time. She has no friends, no family, no hope of getting back, no purpose, nothing. And so she finds Booker and connects with him, and they have adventures together, and they start building this whole life together. And then her friends show up again, and she can go back to an extent. She can kind of go back to the life that she had before.
Mm-hmm.
And so we see that as an opportunity for her to try to, how do you balance both of them? Who are you now? And how does the fact that you have friends around you change you? How does what happens with the Federation, right?
Right.
Where she, the direction she thought her life was going in because of the Federation, and what happens when the Federation doesn't exist anymore. And then and so for her, she kind of had this, a lot of things sort of thrown at her. And like I said, she sort of has to sort of figure out what direction her life is going in. And you know, Booker has had his own life. There's a lot of reasons as to why why he travels the universe and doesn't,
Mm-hmm.
he's not following in the footsteps of his father and brother and all that kind of stuff that's going on, right?
Yep.
But it's interesting what they did in season 4, just to kind of go back there for a second, where Booker does reconnect with his family. He does start to see what it means to have that connection, and then he loses them.
Right.
Right, the whole planet. He loses his whole planet, and
Yeah.
he is now in a position where he is lost and untethered, and he has to take some time to sort of figure himself out. And so between him and Michael, right, he doesn't feel like he's in a position where he can't be a partner. I can't just go live with you and your friends. I feel like what we had, our little bubble has burst, and and something is different here.
Right.
That we'll always have each other, but there's something different that needs to change. And so but then they are able to reconnect, and he needs to, again, that was his time when he needed to sort of deal with his grief. So they get back in this in season 4 or 5, sorry, when they come back into season 5, they recognize each other as friends. They recognize each other as trustworthy. They recognize that they can be in that being in friendship or in partnership is a good thing.
Yeah.
And but both of them kind of not being certain what that means for relationship, as in terms of being in love with each other, and what it takes to sort of find that again. And how do you find, amongst the respect and the trust, what does it mean to kind of come back into love? And the way that they explore that, I thought was really lovely, because
Yeah.
in true Star Trek fashion, you got to have that discussion in between star fights and danger and
Right. Exactly. It's like,
and being lost on a planet forever. So you kind of have to,
right.
you got to make time where you make time, right?
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
figure out a healthy communication pattern. So yeah, so that's good.
Yeah, it's kind of wild there between, and it also shows, I don't want to stay on this, but it also shows kind of how they each deal with loss, kind of, because
Mm-hmm.
with Michael, she had lost, everything by going into the future, and she found, Booker, and that's how they became, Michael and Booker. It's
Yeah,
because
yeah,
she kind of clung to him. And when he loses everything, he needs to get away.
yeah,
It's not I
yeah.
need you, it's I need space. And
Mm-hmm.
that is very much in real life, how people deal
Yeah.
with loss and how people deal with grief and how that affects their love relationship or any relationship.
Yeah.
But here with their love relationship is it could be traumatic at times,
Yeah.
it's serious.
Yeah.
And I like how they show that. And to
Mhm.
me, also because, even though this is all happening and everything like that, to me, it's a lot healthier than one of the other big love relationships we have in season 5, which is the two folks that we find out that
Mhm.
are trying to buy and sell things on derelict ships that they find. We find out that these two folks, Moll and Locke, are actually a couple and they are in love. So it's like
Mhm.
seeing the Moll and Locke relationship and how that plays out. It
They are
makes,
also people
yeah,
that have, it's interesting because they, one of the things they talk about is that they want to go and like be alone together. They want
yes,
to completely leave everything behind and have nobody ever find them, which is a different type of love relationship, right?
yes,
It's not about it's not about having everything in your life. It's only having you. And it's not that I don't think that they play that relationship as being unhealthy, but because there are things they need to run away from.
yes,
So there's definitely reasons for them to want to be anonymous and just disappear into the universe. But when that relationship is tested, right? Because
hmm,
that's a better sense of healthy versus unhealthy kind of relationships. You see what happens when things are tested and how people how they react, how they respond, how are what are they, what are the things that they do and what are the things that they say. And for those two, when their relationship is tested, it's like it's not just it's like the literally no other beings matter. I will do anything and partner with anybody if it means that I get that person back and I get to be with them. And that nothing else matters is where we start to we see some problems in this relationship. Well, not in the
right,
relationship, but we definitely creates problems for everybody else. They
right, exactly,
make it everybody's problem. Well, not they, but Moll specifically. Moll really
yes,
makes it everybody else's problem.
yes,
That and so yeah.
yeah, and it's interesting how with Michael and Booker, I think they're at a different point at this at in season 5, so maybe they have
Mhm.
already been tested a little bit, but they are getting tested a little bit more, and
Mhm.
it's interesting to see how they weather things
Yeah.
while Ma and Locke seem to kind of, I don't want to say disintegrate, but it seems like it's just the pull on their relationship. It almost like their relationship and their life force are the same thing.
Yes. Yes, totally get it. Yes. Where
Yeah.
in with Michael and Booker, you see them in relationship with other people, right?
Yes.
They have the Discovery crew, they have friends, and Booker to an extent is sort of in this position of figuring out what role he plays as a member of the Discovery team as a non, Federation
Person. Yeah.
officer,
Yeah.
right? So figuring what that looks like, but knowing that he has intrinsic value, knowing that he has the respect of the people around him. So
Hmm.
he's not, while he needed to grieve and sort of find himself a little bit in season 4, he comes back and rejoins the team, recognizing that that there is a place for him here if he wants it, outside of the relationship with Michael, right? That these are people that
Right.
respect him, that see him as valuable, that see him as a friend.
Right.
Where the Locke and Moll relationship, there's there is no one else and they don't want anybody around. And that's a very different thing.
Yeah, yeah, it is. It is. And it ends up not being a good thing for them in the end, but
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
but it also shows that, you know, love doesn't thrive in a vacuum, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like
Mm-hmm.
we can't just sit here in this little bubble and suck every other thing of life out of this, right?
Yeah.
It can't survive that way. It's almost a little bit fatalistic, you
Mm-hmm.
know, in that
Yeah.
way. And I think
Yeah.
that's also part of the lesson of Michael and Booker as well, because they
Mm-hmm.
were in a bubble and then they weren't in a bubble, and then, you know, my Booker was in a little bit of a bubble there because, you know, he had lost everything, and you realize that, you know, love grows when love's around. And
Yeah.
you know, I think too, the relationships that Michael and Booker have with the crew are obviously, it's almost a little bit like family, right?
Yeah.
So you've got
Yeah.
that coming in, and then being needed in their society, the whole Federation of Planets, and I am
Yeah.
this, and you know, and that kind of thing. It helps to foster that love,
Yeah.
which they
Yeah.
find is out of respect for each other and everything. With Moll
Yeah.
and Locke, it's more like, I need you. It's more like a, I need you to live. Like, you are my
Yes.
sustenance kind of thing. And when
Yeah.
people are like that with each other, they're just sucking the life out of each other. You know,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
and when it comes to like a moment where, you know, that's tested, and where, you know, people have to stand up, like when Locke had to stand up to his folks, or when we see all of that happen where he did stand up to his folks, that's kind of really in a backstory. It's almost like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, we see where the relationship kind of start to go down. You know, we thought we were, you know, seeing a relationship blossom in the beginning, but no, we're seeing a relationship kind of decline, or kind of eat itself. Or can't think of anything else to say there. You know, a relationship kind of fold in on itself because they have basically folded into each other, right? Because
Right.
that's all they want. They want each other, and that's it. And, you know, kind of going back to the whole progenitors tech, you know, I think that's why in the end, I'll probably need to say spoiler in the beginning there. But that's probably why in the end, the progenitor's tech doesn't necessarily work with Moll, right? Because there's a different mindset that goes on here. She's
Mm-hmm.
trying to do one thing with the progenitor's tech, right?
Okay. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and Michael realizes that the progenitor's tech is not for what, you know, it's not for this self-serving thing. It's not to
Yeah.
bring this person back, right?
Yeah.
The progenitor's
Yeah.
tech is the beginning of everything for everyone. We don't just live in this universe by ourselves, right?
Exactly.
It's more
Exactly.
than just about us, and it
Yeah.
shouldn't just belong to us. And that's why what happens with the whole progenitor's tech. But that's why it's not in a museum somewhere, and you know, people are, you know, whatever. But you know, because the mindset is different, and I think that's part of the reason why it didn't work for Moll.
Okay, that's interesting. See, because I figured it didn't work for her because she didn't put the shapes in the right
Well,
order.
I think that
But I
too.
like symbolically. I like your
Symbolically,
take on
that's
it
what I'm saying.
symbolically. Yeah.
Yes.
But that's
She's
why
going at it
she's
for a
frozen.
different reason. Exactly.
Yeah,
She's
she goes
going at
in.
it for a
Yeah.
different reason. And so that's why she doesn't put the shapes in the right order.
Mm-hmm.
And as Michael put the shapes in the right order, she did it by saying, it's not about what's in the space, it's about the absence of things in the space.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
Mm-hmm.
how she ended up putting that in the right order. So it's not about this selfish need, it's about the space in between all of
It's
us.
what happens in between. It's not what you can see. It's what you, yeah, yeah, exactly. It's all the other things.
Yeah, and so,
Yeah.
and so it's a whole mindset thing there.
Love
Yes,
it. Mm-hmm.
it is a practical. Yes, she didn't put the things in the right spaces. Yes, it's that. But I think that the mindset had to be there for her to put the shapes in the right space, and the
Totally.
mindset was not there with her. So I think that's why it didn't work for her.
Yeah.
But
I
it's
think
just,
also because
yeah.
there's a thing there where, like you said, she has an idea. She has like one thing that she wants to have happen, and it's this is for me. It's
Mhm.
for, there's and Michael, when Michael sort of steps into that power, she does so feeling unworthy to to witness it, right? There's an
Mhm.
unworthiness that she feels, and she says, we can talk about that now or later, whatever you want, about what she says when she gets to that space, and what the how the progenitor sees her. So
Oh yeah, let's talk about that.
yeah, so she says something about being unworthy
Mhm.
because she is far from perfect. And yeah, that she's far from perfect. And the progenitor says all sentient beings are. And it's what you strive for. It's what you strive for that makes a difference.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's such a beautiful thing, because we strive to be the best version of themselves, is what is what we need to do, and how we make that, how we see ourselves, and how we sort of see ourselves improving, right? What helps us to be the best version of ourselves, and that's what the progenitor is looking for in
Mhm.
a person.
Mhm.
Yeah, that it's not about perfection, and it never has been.
And I think this goes along with like one of the themes that you wanted to talk about accepting who you are and being able to live in that space.
Yeah, that's a for me, that was a huge theme of this season,
Yeah.
is being able to accept all these things that have happened to you are part of who you are. And you don't have to be, you don't have, they're not shameful things that have happened to you, and they don't make you less worthy of acceptance. They don't make you less worthy as a member of Starfleet. They all of these things add into being who you are, and we see that sort of play out in so many different ways. There's for Michael specifically, she mentions how she can't imagine that her life was going to be what it is, because she
Yeah.
was a mutineer. There's a lot of reasons why she should have never been allowed on a starship at
Right.
all, much less being able to wear, Captain Reds, right?
Right.
And somebody makes a comment about the red. You look good in red. So
Right.
yeah, that was a cute little thing. But there's so many reasons why she should not be in that position, and yet here she is,
Yeah.
right? And to embrace who she is and who she's become, and recognize that we don't know what the future holds, because that's a big part of it too. She at one point runs into her younger self,
Right.
and nobody, and definitely that younger version is not going to believe that we're the same person, because you, hello, committed mutiny, and now here you are as a captain,
Yeah.
please. and
It's like
and
this
what's
is fake.
interesting, yeah, there's no possible way that you're me in the future. Absolutely not. And I love what she says when as she's sort of leaving that situation, and recognizing how how that time was so dark for her, how it was so hopeless for her, and she could never in a million years could she have imagined what her life was, how her life was going to turn out, and the things that she was going to accomplish and the things that she was going to see. So it's a good reminder for all of us, I feel like, when you're in the darkness, right? You don't know what's coming. You don't know
Right.
you don't know what the future is going to hold for you. And in some cases, when you're in the darkness, you don't quite know your way out. But when someone else is there to guide you, when you have a sound that you can follow, a light that you can follow, a person that you can follow, that sort of helps you to find your way out of that darkness, and pull you into a future that you never could have imagined. And that's what her life really is. She has this future that she never could have imagined when thinking back to that dark time
Yeah. Yeah,
for herself.
exactly.
And she's not the only one is that's in a position of realizing how many surprises the future has for you, and how, the things that you've all these things that you think define you are they are pieces of who you are, and there's no one thing that really defines everything. And that change, there's a line, what did they say about change being hard?
And it
Okay,
does.
we're going to come back to that scene because a lot happened in that scene. But
Okay.
there's a little exchange there where Michael says change can be hard, and Book says it's also the only way anything meaningful can happen.
That's right.
And so as difficult as all these things are that they've gone through, and all these experiences that they've had, to make the conscious decision to change is still so difficult for them, regardless of all the miracles they've been able to pull off. So
Right, right. And I think, going back to, what the progenitor was saying, it makes kind of a full circle moment. It's like, okay, so this is
mhm.
what you learned, right? This is
Yeah,
why you are worthy, because you're able to go through this, and because you're able to actually see that you are a flawed being,
yeah,
but that you've had all these experiences that make you who you are, and you need to accept
yeah,
that you need to now go to the next level of accepting that
yeah.
you are a flawed being, but you are among everybody else who's also a flawed being.
Flawed is to be normal, right?
Yes,
To be
yes.
flawed is to be normal. Like all of us are flawed. All every being in the universe, right? They're all flawed. And but what differentiates you is what you strive to be.
Yeah.
And
And then, to add on what you were saying about change, and change is how we find that out. Change is how we get to the next level of
mhm,
understanding with that.
mhm,
And if she had
exactly.
not changed, she would have not gotten to this level of understanding. But you're
Yeah.
right. She's not the only one that is gone through that.
Mhm.
Throughout the seasons, I would say with Saru, he probably had the biggest physical like
Oh,
change.
Saru. Yeah.
I think from him going to the scared, scared humanoid, to how he walks confident, and
Yes.
ends up finding love, things like that. I think he's the one that over all the seasons has probably made the most, I guess, physical change. But
Mhm,
but I
mhm.
think in this particular season, other than Michael, but Michael's been making the change all along. But other than Michael realizing that she's made the change, I think Tilly actually accepting who she is as mentor, is
Yeah.
that was amazing to me.
Yeah.
Um,
Tilly comes into her own. I mean, so
she
Tilly
really
starts
did.
the show as this, like, look at me, first day on the job, ensign sort of person, right? Who has all this knowledge, thankfully, certainly saved everybody's butt multiple times, but
Yes.
you know, but doesn't quite believe in her own ability and doesn't quite and is so nervous about being assertive in any way. And so and we still see some of that. She has
Yeah.
an idea. I don't know if it's a good idea. I don't, just
Right.
spit it out, right? So we still have a little bit of that because I feel like that's still her, but at the same time, realizing the huge value that she represents in the crew,
Yeah. Yeah.
coming into her own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really liked seeing that, and she, over the season, she's exerted a little bit of the, of her power, right?
Yes.
But I think
Yes.
now that she is, a mentor, she's at Starfleet Academy or whatever, she's really,
Mhm.
coming into her own and actually realizing that's, how she can use her power. Because I think at that different point, she wasn't even sure exactly how to use that power that she had and everything
Yeah.
in certain
Yeah.
parts. Because, she does question herself, in the seasons, but I see less of that here in
Mhm.
this season, and more of I need to make sure these kids know what they're doing, because they really don't know what they're
Oh my gosh.
doing.
The confidence that she has that she's going to go run that marathon thing. And I was
Yeah.
like, get it, girl. All right. You go run a marathon, sure. Or whatever.
Right.
It's not a marathon, but you know what I mean?
But
They
yeah.
have to run. They're on that planet.
Yes, and they
They're on
have to
that
do
planet, and
that,
she
yeah,
is
thing
like,
on
okay,
that
here's what
mission
we're
of,
going to do.
yeah, yeah.
And just with like, oh, Starfleet officer here. I can code. I'm like, you guys don't run at unless someone's chasing you on
Right,
board. But
right.
yeah, so she goes in there and she's gonna do it, and then yeah, she gets some time to think about her
Yeah.
life, and gotta love being trapped. But she's just one of those characters that I feel like has grown and just so much realized her own power,
Hmm.
and that she wants to share that power with others is huge.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And and also in this season, there's there's kind of a spiritualness happening,
Yeah.
and a more of a spiritual growth with Culber, when he,
I want to be friends with Culber.
I know, right?
He is just he's a doctor, right? So he's just always this sort of peaceful, competent, I'm here to help, sort of person. Like there's a lot to be said for that. So I want to be his friend. I just feel like he'd be such a wonderful, kind and encouraging and supportive friend to have around.
Yes, yes. And now that he is gone through, I wouldn't say a transformation, but had this experience of having the Trill past host, going through that Gentara and having the Trill past host in him, and
Mhm.
having that kind of spiritual, I don't want to say
Yeah.
awakening, but awakening. Maybe,
Mm,
maybe just
questioning.
experience that.
Yeah, he has this experience, and then it makes him question. It almost makes him question himself.
Mm.
Like he just sort of
Yeah,
questions, like, what does this mean,
yeah,
right? And wanting to assign meaning to it in a way that feels, as a doctor, of course, the first thing we have to do is there a is do I have like a bug in my brain? Like what is happening here?
right.
Is there like
And that is, yeah.
did something leave behind or whatever, because he feels different. And I think for anyone, when if you have some sort of like a big experience like that, and it can take a lot of different kinds of forms, but I feel like when you have a big experience like that, you realize you come out the other side and you are a changed person. It may
Yeah.
not have been on purpose or intentional or what have you, but you come out the other side of some kind of big experience, and you know that you're different, and you can't go back to whoever you were before.
Hmm.
And for him, he questions what that means.
Right.
He questions how, because he wasn't trying to change. He wasn't trying to be a
Right.
different person, right? It's one thing when you like undertake, you know, something and want to, you know, recognize in yourself there's something that you want to change, but he didn't. He had a pretty perfect life, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so now who am I? And that who am I is the big question.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. And,
Yeah.
and he also realizes some things about, with his family and with his culture
Mhm.
that he
Yeah.
realizes some things that were maybe nebulous before or didn't really hit him because they weren't on a practical level. They were more of a spiritual thing. He now realizes, oh, you know,
Yeah.
it's not a total understanding, but it's I get now why this is there, because there
Yeah.
is this spirituality, there's this spiritual level that I may not have been getting to before, but I see it now.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
that's the thing about, that's the thing that really kind of gets me with the trill
Yeah.
is, because the join trill, because they have all of these past lives
Mhm.
inside of them, and
Mhm.
can live through memories of,
Mhm.
of past things. It's like, does it, you know, does it enhance you in a way?
Mhm.
Does it change you in a way? Does
Yeah.
it, and it does all of those things. It does all of those
Exactly.
things. And it
Yeah.
makes you think about, you're seeing life, literally, you're seeing life in one way. I'm seeing life as YM Nelson, right?
Mhm.
But if I become a joint trill, I see life in a whole different way because
Yeah.
I'm literally, well, not literally, but I am spiritually seeing through other people's eyes, other people that have
Yeah.
lived before me, have had different memories, and I can now, to a certain extent, embody those, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think this wonderful theme that goes through this show specifically where they really examine that process of what it means
Hmm.
to, because who are you and what does that mean,
Yes.
and sort of they come to there's a few different things that they come to, especially here just in the last episode, especially not the last, well, throughout this season. I'll call it this season, not so much the last episode, meaning that you are you are the sum of your experiences, right? You
Hmm.
are all these different things that have happened to you, all the decisions that you made, all of that has brought you to this point of who you are now. And it's not something to fight against, it's something to accept and to acknowledge and to decide how you want to go forward.
Yeah.
Like you were saying, you are who you are, but there's this element of when the trill join, they do become someone else in a way,
Hmm.
because they now have new memories. They have new memories and experiences that change them to be who they are, plus these other lives,
Right.
right? And
Yeah.
so you're no longer the experience of YM Nelson, you're YM Nelson plus all these other experiences, right? So so there's that, and we see that in when Adira becomes a host, and what they go through as they sort of acknowledge and accept the what that path looks like for them, because it takes them a while to be able to tap
Yeah.
into it.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have to go through that whole thing. I don't remember if that I think that's season 3.
Yes.
But then, so for Culber's experience is different, right? Because he's not a host in the same way.
Right.
But he was like a temp.
Yeah. Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
We will continue this discussion on our next episode. Make sure you're subscribed to Nerdy Romantics Podcast wherever you get your podcasts, and visit nerdyromanticspodcast.com to subscribe to our newsletter, where you can get show notes directly in your inbox. Thank you for listening.